and welcome back to Free Media. I'm Robby Soave.
And I'm Niall Stanage. President Trump announced a deal with Pfizer to lower the prices of certain drugs so they will cost the same or less than they do in other nations. There are also plans to create a government website, TrumpRx, where Americans can buy drugs directly from Pfizer, supposedly at discounted prices. Let's watch the announcement.
Today, Pfizer is committing to offer all of their prescription medications to Medicaid, and it will be at the most favored nation's prices. It's going to have a huge impact on bringing Medicaid costs down. In addition, Pfizer is agreeing to provide some of their most popular current medications to all consumers at heavily discounted prices of anywhere between 50 and even 100%, and that's off the price. And in some cases, even more than that. These drugs will be available for direct purchase online at a website operated by the federal government. We're also announcing that moving forward, all new medications introduced by Pfizer to the American market will be sold at the reduced most favored nation costs. So we'll be paying essentially what other countries are paying.
So a lot of this sounds like good news, although I have a number of questions about what the details look like. But everybody's going to be happy about lower drug prices. That's a major across-the-board concern. And the government purchases drugs from Pfizer, so the government should negotiate for better prices. I know that was like a big Bernie Sanders issue, but I don't even see why that's like counter to market principles or libertarian principles. If the government's buying the drug, we could object to that entire system, but as long as that's the system, we should negotiate.
Right.
So, good.
Look, I have no problem at all about the government using its heft or its bargaining muscle to reduce the prices of drugs. That seems a good thing. It seems to benefit the populace at large. We could have a whole separate issue about whether it's an over-medicated society or not. Every time I turn on my TV and see pharmaceutical ads for conditions that I sometimes think are a tad on the specious side.
I like to get over-medicated before I go on TV, but that's just me.
Well, that's legal or not is a whole other matter. So, look, the government using its power to reduce the price of drugs, I think, is a good thing. I suppose maybe the question mark in this instance would be, when Trump does these deals with individual companies, is there a suspicion of some sort of backroom deal, or those companies having to contort themselves to assist him in some other way?
I don't see Jimmy Kimmel being the spokesperson for Pfizer anytime soon.
I don't think that's going to happen. That would lead us into a whole other discussion.
It's going to be Tiffany Trump.
Yeah, exactly. And we have seen this happen before. Wasn't it Jeff Bezos through Amazon agreed the documentary deal with Melania that was a very large sum of money for her behind-the-scenes documentary?
But she's a beautiful woman and a fashion icon and well-deserving of a documentary.
Tim Cook of Apple, what did he give Trump a gold? What was a gold? What did he give? He presented
a gold apple?
It was something
like
it was a gold,
like for the fairest in the kicking off the Iliad.
Was it a gold phone? He gave him a gold something.
I think maybe it was a gold phone. That's nice. My questions, though, are, and then also there's going to be this website, TrumpRx, where it's going to cost even less, but I don't understand that, because, and I brought this up on Rising today, if it somehow costs less to buy it directly from the company, why are we having a health insurance system at all, right? The purpose of the health insurance system, I thought, is because these things are all too expensive in the abstract, and so we, distribute them evenly among the population, because somebody's gonna, if we were just paying market rate, was going to owe more than they can afford. But so we average that out across everyone. A lot of people won't need medical care at all till they're very old or die, and so don't take out from the. So that's how the system works under a health insurance system. So how could it be if it's cheaper to just buy it directly? Why do we just do that then?
Well,
I'm confused.
Part of the problem that I have with the whole American healthcare system is the presence of enormous numbers of middlemen and middlewomen who seem to inflate the price of everything.
Massive cost distortion.
Exactly, massive cost distortion that you wouldn't get in a single-payer system, Robby. If the government just controlled it all, as it should, if the power of big government was brought on behalf of the people, then we'd all be better off.
Well, but tell me then more about how that system works. A system I object to, but we have a middle ground system that certainly is not working better, and we're spending more money on our system than you're spending on your system, and we don't like it more, and we don't get better options. So in your system, they determine, I mean, they're buying the same drugs from Pfizer, right? What do they do? They say, this is how much we're going to pay you for the drugs, and if you don't like it, take a hike?
As I understand it, it is basically that. Yes, there are set government prices for set products and set services. Now, there is in Britain and Ireland, there is private health insurance as well, and obviously you can go different routes. But fundamentally, it is the government that decides these things. Now, of course, drug companies still want the maximum price. There is some negotiation going on there, but it is a negotiated process where the government is essentially the only real buyer. I mean, doctors can buy their own medications for treatments. So that's basically how it works. But it does, of course, cut out a lot of the middlemen who make so much more money. Just in relation to the Trump thing, it would be remiss of me not to mention, we'll talk about the shutdown in a moment, but of course, one of the key issues there, one of the key Democratic demands is about the Obamacare subsidies and cuts to Medicaid and all of that. So though I basically agree with Trump using the government's power to bring down drug prices, that does come against the backdrop of these other things.
Well, I don't want to, send more money, especially it's more government money. It's a partly government system to middle managers, or just to the enormous paperwork that when, you go in, you get a medical service, some kind of, I don't know, let's say it's a screening for something, sure, and then they bill a third party, and then you get shown the bill, and then you pay part of that, and it's just like 18 different triple checking bureaucracy that makes it take more time and cost more money.
Well, and no player in that 18-person chain, other than the consumer, actually has an interest in bringing the price down. They all have an incentive to maximize their own profits, which is why I think it gets so wide.
Right. That's the real problem, that if the government is paying for, if you have, I mean, this comes up with, I'm not an expert on healthcare policy. I know more about student loans, but it's really the same process. That if the government is going to pay it up front and you're maybe just going to pay some part of it later, and there's no price control, I'm not in favor of price controls, but if the government's paying for it and there's no keep trying to keep the price down, well, then they can just raise the price.
Right.
The government's just paying it anyway, and then you're paying it later, and you're really screwed.
It becomes a blank check for government.
But for solving the drug pricing problem specifically, I've proposed this a number of times, and I never get a good rebuttal for why we couldn't or shouldn't just do this. If the problem is that the Pfizer charges us more as Americans to buy the same drug, and they charge, whoever it is, they charge Mongolia less, well, why don't we just buy the drugs from the pharmacy in Mongolia? Yep. We should have a global market. It's a global economy.
Yep.
The only reason we can't do that is the FDA apparently has a rule saying you can't import drugs from other companies. Yep. So if we just got rid of that, we could, I think, like that, fix the incentive or the ability for Pfizer to charge different things to different countries, especially given how this wouldn't be possible in a world where shipping was very logistically difficult, and during a pandemic it would be logistically difficult, but Amazon and other companies are pretty good at shipping everything across vast distances cheaply. Yeah. So I don't think that would raise the cost very much. It should be one global market.
Yeah, I don't have a good rebuttal to that idea. I think it seems a solid idea. I assume that what would actually happen, or what does happen to prevent it, is the drug companies, primarily US-based, have such an enormous financial incentive not to have that FDA regulation that you cite lifted, that they can persuade politicians not to lift it.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
That is a problem. All right, more free media right after this.